appear across the top to indicate when the recording has started.
Good afternoon, members. Welcome this afternoon to our Governance and Audit Committee, 2 p.m. today on the 12th. Just to confirm that this meeting will be recorded and made available to view via the Council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. We don't have any of those today. Therefore, the images, audios of those individuals present and or speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the Council's website at www.caerphilly.gov.uk. Can I remind you that if you lose connection during the meeting, please make every attempt to reconnect. The meeting will continue. Providing our meeting stays correct, and committee services staff are on hand to help out. I wish to also remind everyone that the chair has the discretion to terminate or to suspend recordings if, in my opinion, continuing to do so would prejudice the proceedings, or that continued recording might infringe the rights of the individual. The chair also has the right to remove persons from the remote meeting if that is necessary. Now, please be good today. Thank you. Can I also remind members and officers to mute their microphones but leave their cameras on? That's providing we don't have any hiccups, because often if we have hiccups, if the camera goes off, it helps. So let's hope everything runs smoothly. Members and officers should only activate the microphone after the chair has invited them to speak. Today we'll be using the Microsoft Forms, and within the show conversation doodly thing at the top, where the vote, when members are asked a quick yes, no, or abstain, if that doesn't work, just raise your hand. We'll sort something out. Okay, thank you ever so much. Now we'll go on to roll call.
Could I interrupt? I'm very sorry, Chair, but your camera is off.
Oh, you've had a lucky 5 minutes, Teresa. There we go. Thank you for the reminder.
I could actually see Margaret, but she's gone.
Yes, I could see Margaret. Turn it back on, Margaret.
I think it's just your end, Teresa. We could see her.
We can see you.
Can't hear you, Teresa. Can't hear you.
Oh, right. I've just got a Caerphilly logo only for you, Margaret.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well, though. So
that's okay. We'll go on from there then.
Yeah.
Chair, if I may, can I just? I think I'm going to have to keep my camera off as well because my reception's so wobbly. So apologies for that.
Yeah, no problem, John. No problem. Right, I'll go through the roll call for members. I've got councillors Adams.
Present.
Aldsworth.
Present.
Bevan. Gale. Hardacre. Mann. Colin? Yes, Colin's here.
Sorry, I mislaid the arrow to unmute myself. Sorry. Yeah.
Brenda Miles.
Present.
Teresa Parry.
Present.
John Ridgewell.
Present.
I have had apologies from Graham and Julian Simmons and Nigel Yates. Present?
Present, yes, I found the arrow, yep.
Thank you. Now, I'm not sure which officers are here today, but if we could go straight to Audit Wales, I believe Mark Jones and Gareth Jones are here. Yes, hello, Gareth.
Good afternoon, Chair. Here.
And I've already spoken to Mark, so I know Mark's here. I'm not sure which officers are here. Steve Harris.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Thank you. Lynn Donovan. Deb Gorano.
You, Chair.
Thank you. Lisa Lane. Sue Richards.
Here, Chair.
Ros Roberts.
Afternoon, here, Chair.
Thank you. And we've had apologies from Mr. Edmonds.
Chair, could I just come in, please, Steve Harris?
Yes, of course.
I've also got some colleagues here today, given the nature of the agenda from Finance. So we have Andrew Southcombe.
Yes.
And also Nicola Roberts.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you, Steve.
Did you call Councillor Stenner?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry, Councillor Stenner. Are you with us?
That's fine, I'm with you, yes.
I'm awfully sorry. Okay, we've gone through the apologies. Let's go through agenda item now, which is the declaration. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibilities to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on this agenda, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution, and the Code of Conduct for both councillors and officers. Are there any declarations, please? No? Very good. Thank you. On to agenda item 3 then, which is to approve and sign the minutes of the, oh, I'm so sorry. There we go. There we go. Maybe. Yeah. To approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of July. I'll go through the minutes page by page for accuracy. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. Could I have someone to move and second that report, please?
I'll move, Councillor Miles. Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy to second that, Councillor Adams.
Okay, if we could have the votes, please, Julie. Thank you. I'll be abstaining from this vote because I wasn't at the meeting. That's if I can get this thing to work. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Aha. Okay, has everyone had time to vote? That's lovely, thank you very much. That's, everyone has voted, well, majority voted for. Okay. The Governance and Audit Forward Work Programme is next. Right, now today's meeting, as you can see, is all to do with finance. And the information items are fine as information items. But the January meeting has quite a bit on it, and that's the only meeting we have. So is there anyone who'd like to, any questions, please? Nigel, have you got any questions for this?
Sorry, Chair, could I just come in, just say make a few points on the forward work programme, if that's okay?
Yes, that'd be helpful, thank you.
Yeah, as you rightly state, at the moment we've only populated the work programme for January, but I have been meeting with colleagues over the last month or so to identify reports that we need to put on the agenda for next year. So what I'll do for the next meeting, Chair, I will firm up some dates for forthcoming meetings to take us right through 2022. And I'll also assign the reports to the various meetings. I'll share that with you then, Chair, prior to the meeting in January. So we will then have a forward work programme, which will be populated for the whole of 2022.
Thank you for that, Steve. Now, we have had quite a long discussion on this forward work programme, and we are of the opinion that we need more meetings because the agenda is becoming very weighty to read. So our thoughts are, if we could have, if not 6 weekly meetings as scrutiny, because I appreciate that some reports are going to come outside that time. But I believe that we should be having maybe 8. And if we don't need them, I think it's better to cancel them than to try and fit in ad hoc meetings, because we might not have councillor or officer availability by having things ad hoc. What's your thought on that, please? I've got a couple of questioners. Nigel, who's there for questions, please?
We've got Councillor Colin Mann and Stephen Harris.
Oh, right, Colin.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's on the same theme. I think we did discuss, Steve, in a previous meeting, the merits in having at least one extra meeting, maybe more. And when you look at, I mean, 200 and something pages today? I mean, there is a feeling, certainly for some of us, that the financial report itself, the financial statement, would have merited a meeting on its own, because it would at least give us an idea. I mean, in scrutiny, we limit the number of items so we can give them, proper consideration. And having other things on as well as the financial statements on here really dilutes what I think a lot of us think of the main is the main purpose of this meeting, to take a proper look at the financial statements. So really, that's I think that's where we're coming from as a meeting, or as members anyway. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. What I'll do then, Chair, with your permission, I'll have a discussion with colleagues in committee services, and we will look at adding some more meetings into the calendar for next year. And as you say, if we get to a point where we don't think we need a meeting, that's fine, but let's at least get them in the diaries, and we can try and follow the principles that we previously agreed of not having more than 4 items on the agenda. Recognise what you're saying today, Councillor Mann. Normally with the accounts, we do keep it as a special meeting just to do the accounts. Today we did add on the financial sustainability report that's just been released, purely because we felt that was relevant to the accounts and the position moving forward. But hear clearly what you're saying. I'll have some discussions with committee services, and we'll come up with some proposals for the January meeting.
If I can come back to this a moment, Chair. Thanks, Steve. I think, look at not just from a member's point of view. I think, if I was looking at this from an officer, if I'd spent a lot of time and effort in producing reports and they were more or less nodded through without any consideration, I would wonder why I'd bothered to do them. And really, we do need, if these are worth putting on, they're worth considering properly. And I think that's where we're coming from, really.
Okay.
Can I come back also on the forward work programme. Now, I don't know whether this is the right place, but I was thinking if possible at the January meeting, can something be put together to give the committee some assurance that the changes that's going to be needed for 2022 with the Governance and Audit Committee, with numbers, with everything else to do with the changes, can a report of some description be brought forward so that we know the process, what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. We can agenda that for January. And based on what you've said, we've already got 5 items, I think, in January. So maybe we need to look at putting a meeting in March. So yeah. I'll have a look at that. I think the update on the changes to the audit committee would be timely in January. So we'll make sure that's done in January. And then we'll look at accommodating some of the other reports in March.
Thank you, Steve. Nigel.
Yeah, there was a question about bringing something to the council chamber for November. So the timing is getting tight for this reorganisation in May, and I think the council need to have something in place to put before the members about changes that are coming about. Is that correct?
Yeah, we will be taking a report through to council in November. That will update council on what changes are required. The key thing is that 25% of the membership of the audit or the governance and audit committee will need to be lay members. So we need to look at the current numbers on the committee and how we accommodate the 25%. And I believe, Chair, you've already approached Mr. David Street about this as well. Yes. You'll be having discussions with him. So yeah, there will be something going through in November, but then once council have confirmed their position on this, I think January then will be timely to bring the information through to the Governance and Audit Committee.
Thanks for that, Steve.
Teresa.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. Question for you, really. Has any kind of advertisements gone out for the lay members that we will need? And I understand, you know, it's going to be awkward. If we decide, for instance, on, you know, a 20-member audit committee or a 16-member or a 12, we need to make sure that we have the right kind of people coming in with relevant skills, maybe. So my question is, has an advertisement gone out yet, or when is it due to go out? Because there's got to be a selection process, obviously. You know, if we're inundated with people wanting to be on this committee, or likewise, if we have no kind of response, we're going to be a little bit stuck. So yeah, that's where my question is at the moment.
Okay, plans are underway, but I noticed that Deb has put her hand up. She's actually dealing with it. So with your permission, Chair, if you can bring Deb in, she can provide an update.
Of course. Deb.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to provide some reassurance to members. I've been involved in a working party with the WLGA over the last couple of months, and there is a draft advert, application form and person specification, which is really just needs a little bit of tweaking and is ready to go. So it is just, it's imminent. So if I can reassure you in that regard.
Thank you, Deb. Okay, Nigel.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and this is a really different advert, and I'm just wondering if it's going to hit the target, because people out there, when they're looking for jobs, they're looking for adverts. This advert is for somebody who may not know that they can do this job or even want this job. So it's something like you need to get to the people that you can inspire them to join us. I mean, I don't know where you'd attract that sort of advert, where you go to do that, but I think putting it in Link and the other sort of normal job adverts I don't think will do the trick. We need something a little more inspirational than those areas. I don't know what ideas that have been. I think I've heard a list of where you're going to put the adverts, but it seems like that's where people are looking for jobs, and this is not a job that people would be possibly looking for, but it's something that we need to attract. So I think it's a different exercise than a normal job search. So I don't know how you're going to tackle that one.
Debbie.
Oh, thank you again. The WLGA is hosting a national advert. I believe it's going to be linked to their site, and they're also going to put it in some national media. I think The Guardian was mentioned. Whether or not there's any other places, I'll have to actually confirm that. But I think that your concerns have already been acknowledged, and we are looking, or they are looking at that. They're holding a budget for this, and they are promoting this quite strongly. So, I mean, any other concerns, I can raise them with my contacts at the WLGA for you and give you the information back if that's what you need.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Let's hope it works, because we possibly may have to sort of keep digging for this, because you know, we need to get hold of these people wherever they are out there somewhere.
Colin.
Thanks, Chair. And on the assumption that we are ideally looking for people who are more local to the borough, actually live in the borough, ideally, would it not be sensible to use the local press? Which is probably a lot cheaper than the Guardian anyway. I'm not saying we shouldn't use the Guardian, but I think maybe we should look at it on different levels. You know. I assume we're advertising it through the Caerphilly website as well.
Debbie.
I think it's a valid point. I haven't actually got confirmation of that, but I think that's certainly something that can be done quite easily. As I said, the WLGA, as a national point of contact, have been driving this. They've developed a team to actually assist local authorities with the changes that have been brought forward by this piece of legislation. So they've been assisting us to provide a consistent approach across the whole of Wales. So they're recognising that most local authorities will need at least one, and some will need 4 additional lay members for their audit committee. So I think there's a sort of national push, but obviously it's down to yourselves locally to put into place any local adverts that we want to place. So I mean, I can certainly raise that with our media and communications team once we've got the fine tuning of the advert, job spec, sort of Caerphilly branded, if you like, and we can certainly go forward with that without too much trouble.
And if I can come back, based on previous discussions about job adverts, I think the Western Mail Echo the coverage is quite thin in the borough these days. I think the Argus covers the east of the borough, but people living in the east are far more familiar with that than I am. And you've got the Caerphilly Observer, which attempts to cover the whole of the borough. So, I mean, we've got at least 2 possibilities as far as local media is concerned.
Steve.
Yeah, it's just to provide assurance, really. We'll obviously run with the WLGA, but I think you're all right. We need to do something more local as well. So we will look at advertising in the local press. And like Deb said, we'll also work with the communications team and just see if we can get some comms out there to make sure we generate interest in this.
Okay, that's great. Thank you all for your comments. And we'll leave it with you now, Steve, to alter the forward work programme. And we need to note this, don't we, or do we need to vote? Help. Right, can I have the voting up, please? Thank you. Right, that's 100%. That's lovely. Thank you so much. Agenda item 5. Agenda item 5 is the Audit Wales work programme and timetable for Caerphilly County Borough Council quarterly update, 30th of September. Gareth?
Thanks, Chair. Conscious of members' observations about the primary purpose of the meeting today, so I won't take too much of your time around the local pieces of work, but those we provide you that on a quarterly basis, and you can see how our work programme is progressing. What I would say is that obviously with the trajectory of the pandemic, our local work is being managed in a proportionate way to allow council officers and services to concentrate on delivering services to local residents. So we are trying to fit in our audit work around the delivery of services to local residents, so we are being as proportionate as we can be. So we're providing you with updates when you may be seeing those reports and those coming forward. Happy to take any questions. There was just a couple of the national reports I just wanted to draw your attention to, which are on page 21. We've got the financial sustainability of local government, which will follow the audit of accounts scrutiny that you're going to carry out now. But just two reports that I wanted to draw to your attention. The picture of public services, which looks at public services across Wales as a whole, and some very interesting findings about the way in which funding is being used and how those changes have happened over the last 10 years. But the town centre regeneration report, which was published in September, will be coming to committee in January, but that will be not just the Audit Wales report, it will also be about how the council is responding to that report and to provide you with the assurance that the council is taking action, very much in the same way as we've done with the financial sustainability reports and delivering good governance recently. So it's bringing you both sides of it, not just the report, but also the council's response to those reports. Happy to take any questions, but conscious of your time, members and chair.
Thank you, Gareth. Nigel, who's first on the list, please?
Councillor Miles has a question on page 14 and 15.
Thank you. Brenda.
Thanks. Yeah, two questions then. On page 14, you talk about local risk-based work, which is the timetable scheduled to start in September 2021. And there's a number of options that you could be looking at. I just wondered, where are you with that now? Have those options been considered and decided, or just a general update?
Okay, we've had some really productive discussions with the interim chief executive around homelessness, and have got some options being discussed, some detailed options being discussed, and around the other options. Those are under discussion at the moment. As to which ones of those we will take forward. So when the next update comes through, we should have a much more detailed update. But there's a detailed proposal on the table around homelessness, which I think is one of those issues that is a really important issue for the county borough to be tackling, and we're trying to do that collectively with the council and find the right way forward, taking account of some of the other work that they're already doing. So yes, we have proposals on the table, so it's beyond an initial high level discussion, it's quite detailed discussions.
Julie, have you any idea what's happening? Oh, there we are, it's gone.
I think it's stopped now, Chair.
It has, yes, thank you.
So on that, I think homelessness is a really topical one. So I think, yeah, that's a good one to go for. How many others are you looking, out of the number of options you've got there, how many areas of work in total are you looking to cover?
There might be one other area at the moment.
One other.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. And then my second question was on the very next page. There's an item at the bottom of the page there on improvement reporting audit, which is scheduled for November 2021. So it's just that's not far away now. So I was just wondering, that hasn't yet commenced, but what is the plan for completing that? Is that on track?
Councillor Miles, that's the provisions underneath the now
the local government measures. So the council has to publish its improvement objectives and then report against those. Those were set in 2020-21, and there'll be a report going before council around the outcomes of the council's performance in due course. And once that's been published, we then certify that the council has published its performance report, and that's our role underneath the measure. One of the officers, Ms. Roberts, would be able to advise around the timescale of that, but that's our role in that, is to actually just certify that.
Right. So is anyone else able to comment on whether the council is fulfilling its duty?
Chair, can I suggest that we ask Ros to come in on this item, or Sue?
Can I just hold it for just a moment? Julie, Mark Jones, the auditor, is having lots of interference. Is there any problem?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair. Everything seems fine to me. I did hear that the noise just now, I think it was Gareth's, maybe something to do with his headphones maybe, but this all seems fine to me now.
All right. Well, let's hope it'll sort itself out then. If it doesn't, Mark, please let me know.
Okay.
Nigel, who's next? Oh, sorry, Ros. Ros, please come in.
Hello, Chair. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I've got the bad head cold of which Councillor Mann spoke, so I wouldn't inflict the camera on you. It's the 27th.
It's not mine, honestly.
27th of October is when the performance report goes to Cabinet, and then the 9th of December is the date for Council. So just to confirm that the dates that Gareth was mentioning.
Okay, thanks very much.
Colin has a question. Councillor Mann.
A couple of quickies, please, Gareth. Well, hopefully they are. One is affordable housing. I'm just wondering whether you'll be the first person to come up with a real assessment of what affordable housing is, as nobody else has up to now. And the other one is the town centre regeneration. Is that a generic all Wales thing, or is it something we can apply to our own situation?
On the second point, the town centre regeneration, that's a national study, but within the national study there are some recommendations which we're asking each individual council to respond to that recommendations, taking account of their current situation, and that, from what I understand, is the purpose of the report that will come forward in January. So you will receive the Audit Wales National Study Report, and then from your head of planning and regeneration, you will receive an update around what the council's response to that report will be. So that's on that one. Hopefully to provide you with assurance that the council has received the report and is taking action around the areas identified within your local context, because clearly the local context within the county borough of Caerphilly, you have very different town centres, ranging from the north of the borough, where they're quite small town centres, right the way through to the middle of Caerphilly. No town centre is the same. And obviously, as the pandemic goes through, there are quite clearly some quite considerable impacts on the individual town centres right the way across the county borough. And I know that that's something that officers are taking into account. What I would say is that the study that has been published has taken account of the views and insight of officers from Caerphilly who engage really thoroughly and really openly with the study team. So it is a report that has got some input from Caerphilly into those national findings. In terms of affordable housing, I'm not quite sure where that has come out of our update. Is that linked to the homelessness question, or is that around the national study on affordable housing? Sorry.
No, sorry, which one, Gareth?
Affordable housing. Sorry, I didn't quite pick up where you. Yeah,
it's oh, hang on, it's a few pages on. I just flicked back to something else.
All right, yes, that's on page 23. Yeah, not something that I'm directly working in, but I will go back to the team who are working on that, and I'll send an update through the chair to you around what the scope might be.
I mean, the problem is that many of us struggle. I mean, people come out with this sort of term affordable housing, and you know, it's only affordable quite often to people who are earning 4 times as much as a lot of people living locally. So it's a nonsense classification as far as a lot of us are concerned. So I mean, it's, well, there we are. So if you can shed any more light on that, it would be good. So the other one I wanted just to, you've got the Care Inspector of Wales, no inspections are scheduled at this time. Is this to do with the pandemic, or is it to do with something on page 20?
It's due to the pandemic at this time. That's what's been agreed between at the current moment in time in terms of the local inspection work. Although there are remote engagements going on, and that update has been provided by Care Inspector at Wales rather than that's not our interpretation of what they're doing. That is their update to us that we then provide back through to you. From what I understand, it's to do with the pandemic and the visiting requirements, and so it's about keeping everybody as safe as we possibly can. But I know that in terms of the strategic discussions, Care Inspector at Wales officers are engaging with relevant directors and heads of services as time goes on in the remote fashion that we all work in at the moment.
So it's all virtual stuff then?
It's what we're all working in that way at this moment in time, but you know that obviously changes as the risk assessments change and the guidance changes accordingly.
Okay, thanks, Dr.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Are there any other questions for Gareth, please? No? Okay, thank you ever so much. This report is for noting, so thank you ever so much. We'll move on now to the financial statement, agenda item 6. Can I ask Steve, please, to start us off?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll give a brief introduction to the report. The purpose of the report is to present the Audit Wales Audit of Accounts report for the 2020-21 financial year, and to seek a recommendation from the Governance and Audit Committee. The Council approves the audited financial accounts at the Special Council meeting on the 14th of October. The production of the financial accounts and the subsequent audit have again been challenging for finance staff and for the audit team due to the ongoing impact of COVID-19 and staff working in the main remotely. However, it is pleasing to note that it is the Auditor General's intention to issue an unqualified audit opinion on the financial accounts. And I'd like to put on record my thanks to my finance colleagues and also the audit team for their hard work and professionalism throughout the audit process. Members will note that the auditor's report does not include any recommendations at this stage, and these will follow in an addendum report that will be presented to the Governance and Audit Committee at its meeting in January. This report will also include details of the management responses to the Audit Wales recommendations and progress to date at that point in time. I'd now like to hand over, Chair, to Mark Jones from Audit Wales to present his report, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions on the report and the audited financial statements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mark. The echoing has stopped, I believe.
Yeah, that lasted a few minutes, but then it went, so that's good news.
That's good.
Whether I would have echoed back at you, I'm not sure, but thanks, Steve, and thanks, Chair. I'll just take a few minutes to touch on a few key points from our report. I'll take it as read, but just touch on a few points. The report discharges our responsibility to report our findings to you, as Steve says, ahead of your recommendation to council members who will be meeting on Thursday evening. And the report will also go to council on Thursday as well, but your recommendation to them is clearly quite important and required as part of the process. The most important message in the report is that we intend to issue an unqualified audit opinion on the 2020-21 accounts. And the proposed audit certificate, which contains the opinions, is at Appendix 2 of the report. When we say unqualified opinion, we mean a good positive opinion. You know, it's a positive opinion. The accounts are true and fair, no items of lawfulness or unlawfulness rather, and therefore it's a positive outcome and a positive opinion. We do draw attention at paragraph 4 in the report at the time of writing to some ongoing work in terms of what are known as your JANEs, joint agreement, not entities, and the council has 6 JANEs, the biggest one by far being the Cardiff City deal, Cardiff Capital Region City deal. We've kept in touch with the auditors of those 6 JANEs since we've written the report, and the feedback from colleagues on those JANEs has been positive. So we do not foresee any late material adjustments to the council's accounts. I can't rule it out totally sat here today, but it's extremely unlikely that any material adjustments will come to the council's accounts between now and Thursday. Some other matters to draw quickly to your attention. We do comment, as we're required to, on the uncorrected misstatements and whether there are any that are uncorrected. And you may have read that there are 2. One of them relates to a point that was reported last year as well, and this is last year it was 1.2 million and this year it is 1.5 million, and it relates to a provision against a debtor balance. And as Steve says in his covering paper to the committee, officers are still working on that balance. Will correct it one way or another in 21-22, but as in terms of the 2021 accounts, that balance does still sit in those accounts at 1.5 million uncorrected. And the second uncorrected misstatement is to do with the Tredommen Innovation Park and Business Park. And there's a difference between the amounts in the valuations and the amounts in the accounting records. And therefore, the valuations in terms of the accounting records, it's understated by 1.3 million. So 1.3 million and 1.2 million are big figures, but our materiality in the as you would have seen in the report is 6.6 million. So when you take them together, they don't cause us a problem as auditors in terms of signing off the annual accounts. So we can live with those amounts. We can live with those items that are not corrected in the accounts. There are some corrected misstatements which we do draw to your attention, where officers have made corrections between the draft accounts and the accounts that you have today in the pack, and they are set out at Appendix 3. Only one of those adjustments actually affects what we call the primary statements, your income and expenditure account in old terms, or the comprehensive income and expenditure statement as it's been called for the last number of years. And that's a £633,000 adjustment. So in accounting terms, not a huge adjustment, but it's one that we are obliged to report to you, and it's to do with the accumulated absence costs. That's basically untaken leave. Untaken annual leave at the year end is an accrual, is a liability on the balance sheet, money that you owe, and therefore that's been adjusted by £633,000. There is the we also mentioned in Appendix 3 the omission of material related party transactions that have been corrected in the accounts that you see today. So that's another one I would draw attention to. The other corrections in Appendix 3 relate to classification, changes in classification and disclosure of transactions and balances. So the amounts are not recorded quite in the right place, but they don't really significantly affect any of the primary statements or your bottom line kind of outturn, for example. I'll just mention briefly Exhibit 1, where we comment on the timetable. There's quite a bit of narrative in Exhibit 1, commenting on the statutory dates and the Welsh Government dates. We're in a pandemic year again, so things have changed timetable-wise quite significantly. And the most important point to take away from Exhibit 1 is that all being well between now and Monday of next week, the accounts will be certified on the 18th of October, and that will be some 6 weeks ahead of the Welsh Government's deadline of the 30th of November. So that's the key thing to take away from the narrative that we put in Exhibit 1 within the report. And as Steve said, and we do say in the report, we will be producing an addendum report, which will set out some audit findings, some audit recommendations, and the management responses. You had 22 last year. That we're not going to repeat that kind of number. The number that you get will probably be around about 4 or 5, maybe possibly 6 areas where we'll make some observations, recommendations, and get management's reply, which you will see in the January meeting of this group. And I'd just like to close then and thank all council staff. We predominantly work with people in finance, but not only in finance. The audit can take us anywhere throughout the organisation, and indeed it does. So we'd like to thank all council staff who helped us with their insight and their information, enabling us to get where we are today. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Nigel, who's first, please?
I think you have a question on page 32.
Can you ask whoever's next, please, because I haven't got it up.
Okay.
Apologies for
Councillor
that.
Parry, page 34, item 12. Sorry.
Hi. Well, it's a question for both the auditors as well as Steve, really. With the uncorrected misstatements, I note with a little bit of we understand that there was an extra member of staff put in so that the work could be done on the 1.2 million. But I'm a little disconcerted that now it has increased to 1.5 million as of the 31st of March this year. I would have hoped to have seen some kind of progress with that figure. Perhaps it's not possible, perhaps that can be explained, but can I ask the auditors whether they think that it's reasonable that it still hasn't been sorted out, or would they have expected it to have been resolved by March this year?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Parry. I guess the starting point for me is last year there were 22 recommendations by Grant Thornton, as it was last year, 20 of which were accepted by officers. And what we have found is that progress with 19 of those 20 has been good. So I guess that's the bigger picture. The context is that 19 out of 20 is a good mark, if you like. That's a lot of progress on a lot of recommendations, and this one sits outside of that. So overall, I'd say the progress has been very strong. It's just this one has run beyond. Steve would probably know the reasons, the detailed reasons why better than I would. One thing that we did was we sought to establish whether there was a potentially bigger problem here. You know, could it be 8 million? Could it be 9 million? That's what we were interested in, and we were satisfied from the information we saw and the conversations we had that it was 1.5 million and not a potentially far bigger figure. At that point, to be frank, we probably parked it until next year and we'll pick it up as part of 21-22. But as to why the delay on this one rec is kind of run a little bit longer than planned, Steve probably knows the detail on that one better than me.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, happy to come in, Chair. Just to reiterate, I guess, what Mark has just said, we need to be mindful of the fact that we did have a lot of recommendations to deal with last year. It was well into November last year before we had the auditor's report, so we've only really had, a number of months to address all of this. But as Mark said, 19 of the 20 recommendations we've made good progress on. Unfortunately, we're not quite there with this one, but we did have a lot of other priorities during the year with the pandemic. We had numerous streams of grants that we had to process coming through for businesses, which meant we need to prioritise some resources in those areas. We did have some long-term sickness absence within the accountancy team, which didn't help us as well. So that's all I can do is give you my commitment that we will get this resolved by January. I've talked to the team about it. They're going to put a small team together to look at this. But clearly, as the Section 151 officer, I need to have the evidence base for me to make a call on how this will be treated in the accounts. So some progress has been made. We're not quite there, but we'll be in a position to give you a positive update on this one in January.
Thank you, Steve. My concern was, I know that you'd had an additional member of staff, but I hadn't realised that you'd had some long-term sicknesses that have really hampered you. Can I ask, do you think that you have enough staff at the moment?
I'd always have more staff if I could get them, but look, we're under a lot of pressure, aren't we? We're in uncharted territory at the moment. That's all I can do is give a big pat on the back to the team. They're all working really hard. It's been a significant achievement to get this audit done and get it over the line 6 weeks in advance of the deadline. So that's good work. But one of the things I will be doing moving forward is looking at what we need as a finance team in the longer term. Obviously, as we come through the recovery period, the organisation has an ambitious programme of change, transformation, etc. moving forward. So I will be discussing with all of my colleagues exactly what this finance function needs to look like in the future. And again, we can provide you with updates on that at some point.
That's lovely. That's very good. But this something that's niggling me is, why has the figure gone from 1.2 million to 1.5?
I mean, clearly, this is housing benefits related, and there's obviously a large number of transactions in relation to housing benefit every year. And clearly those transactions will impact on that balance year on year. So it has increased, but again, by January, we'll have bottomed out exactly what this balance relates to, and I will be making an appropriate recommendation on how it's treated in the accounts. So this will not be an issue then when we're having this conversation this time next year.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks. If I could ask a question, please. It's on the word materiality. It's in Appendix 1 and it mentions 6.6 million. Can you explain, does that mean before anything kicks in, 6.6 million has to be the number?
Potentially. I mean, if you go to paragraph 3 of the report, we mentioned the 6.6 million, and that's our materiality. That's 1% of gross expenditure, just for you to be aware. So when we audit the councils across Wales, the main materiality is set at 1% of gross expenditure in your comprehensive income and expenditure statement. Before I come back to your question, we also set some lower materialities, which are in a paragraph 3 on page 32, and that's £1,000 materiality for senior officers' remuneration, pension, and any exit packages. So that's a far lower materiality, and £5,000 for related party transactions and balances. So again, much lower materiality levels for those areas. 6.6 million is what we assess materiality to be for most of the account, and we consider anything we find collectively. So we need to be mindful of errors that we find, any misstatements that we find. But there's a running total on that. You know, if we had 4 errors and they were all say 5 million, or all say £5 million, that potentially is a collective error of £20 million. So there's the collective position that we keep under review and formally document in the file. But the figure that we're assessing the audit against is that 6.6 million. If we had a materiality of £1, by the way, we'd be looking at every single transaction you undertake for the financial year, every transaction, because we would have to. So we set materiality across all audits, whether it's public or private sector, because that's the principle of audit. You cannot look at everything, and you set that level of materiality.
I appreciate that. That was my question. Was that £6 million a collective amount, or was it a one item?
Yes, it's collective. We assess it on a collective basis.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Mann has a question on page 32, item 4.
I'm sorry,
I was currently looking. Yeah, sorry, it is the right one. You did mention it, Mark. I think, was it Mark or Gareth?
Yes.
About this new woman I hadn't heard of before, called Jane. I don't know. It's could you just put a bit of add something to the bones of that? I'll get it right in a minute, because it is. I think it's probably a new one on a lot of us, and as you say, it's the Cardiff Capital Region, which is a biggie in that. But you're trying to keep an eye on the overall situation between us and lots of other people, I assume.
Yeah, once the figures become material, coming back to the materiality point, that's your share of these, James, by the way. So your share. Once the figures become material, they get consolidated into your accounts. And some of the councils this year, if you look, say, on their public accounts on the website, have consolidated figures in. You were very, very close to consolidation. You were about £120,000 within being consolidated, which is why we have been keeping a very, very close eye on it, because these three of these 6 accounts have been certified. 5 of them are quite small, as we've been saying. It's the Cardiff City deal, really, but the Cardiff City deal is drawing to a close. But it would not take a great deal to change figures that need to be consolidated in your accounts. The audit is kind of pretty much wrapped up now, but due to the time of committees, it'll be considered similar to this meeting in November. Next year, and Steve agrees with us on this, the likelihood of consolidation, because the city deal is growing and having more projects and so forth, the likelihood of certification is almost a certainty, because you're almost there already. But we're keeping a close eye on it this year because you're so close to materiality on that consolidation. But we don't now expect any adjustments to come through that require consolidation. So I don't know if that helps, Councillor Mann, but happy to take any follow-up question on that.
No, I say it's a new sort of phenomenon. I think as far as a lot of us are concerned, just trying to get an understanding of what it was about. Could I go on to a different one, Chair, if you don't mind?
Sorry, Chair.
Just a moment, Colin. Steve,
sorry, Steve.
Yeah, so only a quick one, Councillor Mann, and coincidentally, Mark said exactly what I was going to say just as I pressed the hands up. And that was just to confirm that when we're doing the accounts for 21-22, we will be working on the basis that we need to consolidate this into our accounts, because as Mark said, it's very close. We all know the city deal is growing, so inevitably we're going to have to treat this in a different way in the accounts next year.
Okay, great minds think alike, Steve.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, could I go on to page 26? Sorry, I'm not sure how much we've covered this or not, but it's this it's the non-trivial misstatements. Now, when you see a figure of 1.5 million, you know, a lot of people, a lot of the public we represent out there would obviously not think that was non-trivial. And it's this thing about whether things are material or not, but it is really a case of how much progress we're really making on sorting this one out, and you know, acknowledging all the issues. And I did mean to say earlier, Steve, that and I'm sure we all recognise all the hard work that has gone in with yourself and your staff to actually get these accounts sorted, and I think we appreciate that. But our job is to sort of query the things that need querying, isn't it? So it is really what progress is being made on these on the debtor balance, and whether we can. I mean, there'll always be debtors, obviously, but what is the aim to get it down to a certain figure, or what are you actually looking to achieve there?
I mean, what I'll be looking to achieve is to have a full 100% understanding of what the balance represents. And then I can then make a determination as to how we deal with that balance. It may be that we just write it out of the accounts. It may be that the balance needs adjusting, but that's all I can do, Councillor Mann, at this stage, is just reiterate what I've already said. This will be resolved for January, and we will update you in January on exactly what we've done with the balance.
So you are saying that further investigation may prove that these things are unclaimable, unresolvable, or whatever, or you will come back to us to say, well, X amount of this is stuff we're still pursuing to try and get back. Is that
I want to be in a position, Councillor Mann, in January where we have a full understanding of what the balance is and how the steps we're going to take to deal with that balance in the accounts. As I said, it'll either be that the balance cannot be substantiated fully and we write it out of the accounts, or that the balance is overall even understated, albeit we're satisfied that that's not the case. But we will determine by January exactly how we're going to deal with it, and I will update you in the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I think Councillor Adams wants to come in, so I'll shut up for the minute.
Yes, you've got Councillor Brendan Miles and Councillor Mike Adams to come in on questions.
Brenda, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question about Appendix 3, the summary of corrections made. And it's just a general question, really, as to whether, I mean, I guess when you're looking at draft accounts, you are going to uncover errors that need to be corrected, and that's kind of probably fairly standard. But I wondered if any of those errors that you detected, you were sort of surprised at or were out to the ordinary, anything that we should be kind of aware of, or are they pretty standard and run-of-the-mill type of things?
Yes. Thanks,
Chair, can I
Councillor.
interrupt a minute? My question was on exactly the same point in summary of corrections made. I don't know whether if I asked it first, that would help Mark.
Yeah, fine.
As well. Right. Thanks both for that. Yeah, summary of corrections made. Mark, when you mentioned about the £0.633 million, I'm sure I heard you say it was related to untaken leave.
Yes, the cumulative absence accrual that was introduced from memory probably about 6, 7, 8 years ago. So whether you're a council, whether you're a health board, whether you're the Welsh Government, whether you're Audit Wales, you will have an accrual on your balance sheet of leave balances at the year end. So that's what we're talking about there, is the untaken leave, which was an accounting requirement introduced a number of years back.
Yeah, I thought so. It's not actually money that we owe to the people who didn't take it. It's the value to them if they'd taken it at the right time. We don't have to pay it back.
No, I think I can't imagine there's an organisation out there, not a large organisation anyway, that at the end of the financial year there is no staff member whatsoever who has a balance of leave. You know, if your leave year is different to the financial year, clearly you would pro rata and calculate what the balance at the 31 March would be, and what have they taken. All of these large public bodies and small public bodies as well are going to have untaken leave balances, but it's a value. It's a value. You're not writing checks to anybody in that sense. It's a value.
Okay, thanks for.
Brenda, does that answer your question as well?
No, mine was just a little bit more general, really, as to whether any of those corrections were out of the ordinary or unusual.
Yeah, the only one really, I think they're all fairly standard items in terms of adjustments. The one that we'll comment more on in the addendum report is the related parties one. We do set a lower materiality on the related parties. So when we say there were a number of material omissions in terms of related parties, bear in mind that materiality is £5,000, not 6.6 million. But there were a number, and that process can be strengthened for 21-22. So that's the only one I'd really mention. But we will report on that in due course, and you get chance to comment on that in January if you wish to.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigel, is there anyone else with questions, please?
Yes, Councillor John Ridgewell has a question.
I think. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I'll put the camera on and risk it for a bit. Yeah, thanks, Chair. And really, it's a supplementary question to the one that was being covered off just now in terms of the accumulated or accrued annual leave cost. And it was curiosity, really, because that was going through my mind when you made that statement. At some juncture, I assume that sum will have to net off at one point, but I can't see how, if it's always being accumulated, isn't that figure going to get bigger and bigger and bigger ad infinitum?
It's recalculated every year, so every year you start from scratch really, and you will calculate what that leave balance is at the year end. So we don't expect it to get consistently bigger, consistently growing. That would be an unusual kind of movement in it. It will deviate up and down. Where we get skeptical about annual leave accruals is sometimes, and I've seen some even this year, you get an annual leave accrual that might be, say, £733,000 this last year, and then it's £733,000 this year. And then you think, well, it's unusual for that figure to stay the same. Mathematically, it's unusual for that figure to stay the same. So then you wonder whether the public body has gone back and done the calculation properly and things like that. But it shouldn't have a constant. It shouldn't have a constant growth going constantly up year on year. It will deviate year on year.
Yeah, I think you've answered it. Yeah, but it was curiosity rather than any really material importance. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nigel, anyone else, please?
Councillor Colin Mann.
Thank you. Colin.
Thanks, Chair. Jumping on a little bit, page 70. Favourite subject, Steve?
Ask your question, Colin.
Lots of big figures there on usable reserves. We've got the general fund balance. We got the total usable reserves. We got unusable reserves, and the total at the end, which is not a small figure. Do you want to shed a bit of light on some of that, Steve?
Yeah, I suppose really the easiest way to deal with this is that, as you know, Councillor Mann, we do bring a detailed report through to the P&R Scrutiny Committee every year on the reserves. And that report is based on the balances as at the 31st of March, the previous year end. So the report that I'll bring through in January will be linked back to the figures in the financial accounts. And again, we will give a full detailed explanation of what all those reserves are held for. And you probably recall from previous years that we also include some recommendations in that report about releasing some of those balances for other purposes as well. So if I can ask you to be patient on that one, and in January we will bring through another detailed report breaking down the usable reserves.
Yeah. One thing which we can't classify as non-material anyway.
Well, yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for now then. Thanks, Chair. I say it's eye-watering sums of money, really, isn't it?
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mark. Have we any other questions, please?
I got no other questions.
Thank you, Nigel. Can I have someone to move and second the report, please?
Can I move it?
Thank you.
Happy to second that one, Margaret.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. The recommendations are, before we go to the vote, 311 is to receive and comment on this report. 312 is to recommend to Council on the 14th of October, and approve the meeting of the 14th of October. And 313 is to note that the audit of accounts, the addendum report will come to the 25th of January meeting next year. Okay, could we have the voting pod, please, Julie? Thank you. That's clearly carried. Thank you all very much. Thank you, officers. And move on to agenda item 7 now, which is the Audit Wales report, financial sustainability of local government. Right, Gareth and Mark are doing this report. Who's first, please?
It will be myself, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Just to set this in context, and I think part of this was touched on in the introduction to the meeting when the agenda items were discussed. The reason for including this is to set your position within the national context, and also to follow through what we presented in October last year when we presented an initial overview of the impact of COVID, which was summer 2020. We then presented you in July this year the local report on financial sustainability, which you'll recall what we said in that around the medium-term financial plan being underdeveloped compared to some other authorities. that your levels of reserves were increasing and were high. They were the second highest level across Wales in 2019-20. We don't as yet have the complete data set for 2020-21, but in our local fieldwork, and there's been evidence through the accounts, those levels of reserves have also increased, and that your liquidity was strong. And we made 3 proposals for improvement. So the reason for putting this report on there is to say this is where we've got to as a national picture in terms of COVID-19 impact, recovery and future challenges, just so that you're aware as members of what we're saying by Audit Wales. So kind of the bigger picture is that borrowing, spending and demand pressures exist for UK and Welsh government. And so those are very much pressures that will come through in the next 3 or 4 years. And compared to England, where councils in Wales have not had to rely on their reserves to balance their 2021 budgets, largely due to the additional funding made available to them by the Welsh Government, which has remained in place until the end of September 2021. But significant future challenges remain. And I think that's really important. On page 184, we can see the total usable reserves and how they've increased. And I've referenced the fact that Caerphilly's reserves are 29.2% in the last published figures for 2019-20, which puts the council second highest for those. What we also notice is that public sector borrowing has increased during the pandemic and future funding levels are uncertain, so that we have got that coming together. And demand for some services is likely to increase. And we've seen that in areas such as homelessness, children who are looked after, vulnerable adults who require safeguarding, and also life expectancy has also increased as well. So we have that confluence of issues coming together there, and the number of people sleeping rough as well. So we can see that in terms of financial sustainability, key things that we're identifying is that the cost of COVID was obviously covered to a great extent by the Welsh Government, and we set out that in terms of what the council had estimated it had received from Welsh Government and what it had paid out in terms of lost income and additional costs, and that almost balanced itself out at the point that we did our field work early in 2021. What we found, and I think the really important things there are around that it's about making sure that financial strategies, and there is a lot of work needed to develop a more sustainable approach to financial planning in the medium to long term. And we're not underestimating the amount of challenges and the amount of uncertainty that Section 1.5 officers and other officers face in gathering the relevant information to get that, so that the plan is as detailed and as robust as it can be to help the council to get over the challenges that it faces. The reserves position, we've talked about that. What we do say is that having a relatively high level of reserves can support a council to respond to challenges, and those with lower levels of reserves actually have other challenges in terms of responding to some of the increased demand, some of the changes that will come. So the council has got some resilience built in there through its this high level of reserves, and it will be about how members, and obviously you do have that process annually whereby Policy and Resources Committee consider that report on reserves. So clearly members are engaged there. Performance against budget, we said in 2021 that the council continues to underspend against its revenue and capital budgets. And again, that's really important that is something that is worked on. We made you a recommendation in our report. Savings delivery, we identified that the council has a good track record of delivering its planned savings, but that it had no further planned savings within its current medium-term financial plan. The budget for this year doesn't actually include any savings for 21-22. Obviously, there will be the discussions through the budget setting process for 22-23. And then liquidity, we identified that you had a strong liquidity position for many years, and that's not reflected across all 22 councils in the same position. So what we came nationally to find were the 4 steps that can help councils to improve their financial sustainability in the short to medium term. And some of those are around financial strategies. We did make you a recommendation on this that the council's taken forward through its corporate review on sustainable finance. But some of the elements of the steps that we've identified there include having a clear and robust financial strategy that sets out the likely level of funding available as well as anticipated demand for and cost of services. And it's now more than ever important to have a financial strategy that members are aware of and understand where the council's assumptions come from and where the assumptions sit in relation to those made by other councils. So some really important elements there. Reserves, obviously having your planned approach and the use of reserves to ensure that that approach supports longer term financial sustainability is really important, and they can be an important funding source to support investor save initiatives or to support transformation programs. And also having those regularly reviewed, which, as we've heard from the Section 151 officer, happens annually in Caerphilly, is really important, so that they can allow members and officers to set priorities around the use of reserves. Performance against budget is really important, and to know what's realistic for services to achieve, and then understand and act on areas of consistent overspends is important. And then obviously savings deliveries, understanding what is realistic to be delivered, and to act on areas that don't deliver those planned savings. What we do have is that we're not going to plan to undertake another local report on financial sustainability in the next year. We will continue to monitor the financial position of each of the councils, as we've set out in our report. We may well come back to this and do some national or local work, depending on how circumstances play out. And obviously at the moment, none of us know where that will go, but we reserve obviously the right to come back and do some work on that. But we've done those 2 reports nationally, the 2 reports locally. We've identified those issues, and we will be following up on those 3 proposals for improvement that we issued in July, working closely with officers. So more than happy to take any questions that members have on that. You're on mute, Chair, sorry.
There's Councillor Colin Mann had his hand up. I don't know if you wanted a question, but I think I had a vote for Councillor Miles as well. I think had a question.
Okay, I think Councillor Adam, I'm quite happy to hang fire until the others are gone.
I can't, unfortunately, Chair, I can't hear you.
Sorry,
Margaret, you're on mute again.
Here we go. I'm so sorry you did say, Gareth. I just wasn't listening properly.
I say I'm quite happy to hang fire until the others have.
It's
we
more
may be on the same.
Yeah,
we may be
more
on the same
a comment to Margaret than a direct question. But just to say, it was very good to hear those comments from Mark regarding Gareth rather, about the resilience within our accounts that we will obviously need to have carrying forward, because we are going to be facing some very strange, probably, comments from the people who set what our total budgets might be in the next few years. But there we go. So at least we going into that period in a fairly safe position, and depending on the decisions that we make as a council going forward, that will wander about on the zero line, up above or below. So let's hope that we get much better news from both Cardiff and Westminster over the next few years than perhaps the pundits are saying.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Brenda Miles.
It's okay. I did flag up that I had a question before we started this meeting, but it was only to say about putting that report into the Caerphilly context, and that's been described very well already. So no question from me now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Colin.
Yeah, it's along the same lines. I mean, this report is very generic, and I think that was covered, but I'm trying to recall that sort of detailed local report, and I'm struggling at the moment. But yeah, the question basically was, well, how does that leave this authority? Because I mean, for example, on page 188, you're saying that some councils are better placed than others, and the COVID-19 costs have been mitigated by each council. Well, we know that. you're stating the obvious in a way. You're stating general knowledge, and we're more. I imagine most of us are more interested in your opinion of where this authority is, rather than just that general report.
Steve, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to come in just to give a bit more local context. Gareth has touched on most things, but at the meeting in June, you did receive the local report. There was more detail in that report about the proposals for improvement. But as Gareth said, they were essentially around strengthening our medium-term financial planning, looking at the process we currently use for setting our revenue and capital budgets, and also to articulate what the financial benefits will be from our transformation programme and link that to the medium-term financial plan. Gareth did mention that sustainable financial planning is one of the 10 corporate reviews that are currently underway as part of the transformation programme. And what we'll be looking to do is to give regular updates to the Team Caerphilly programme board. Also, we'll be taking update reports periodically to the Policy and Resources Scrutiny Committee and Cabinet. And whilst that will focus on the wider transformation programme, it will also drill down to the proposals for improvement on the financial sustainability assessment. So updates will be provided through that process. And as you know, as a Governance and Audit Committee, you do receive updates on proposals for improvement from regulators periodically, and the progress against the proposals for improvement in the financial sustainability assessment will be covered as well as part of that process. So as a committee, you will receive regular updates. And again, to reiterate what it says in the report, Caerphilly is in a strong financial position. We accept there's things we can do to improve, there always are, but we're well placed to face the challenges moving forward, the most significant of which obviously will be dealing with the recovery phase from the pandemic. It's been great that we've had the extra funding working its way through in the last 18 months, but there's no guarantee that that's going to continue. In fact, in my view, it's clearly not sustainable to provide that level of funding moving forward. So we will need to have a plan to address that. And also, we'll need to look very closely at the way we provide services in the future post-pandemic. There's a lot to learn, and we need to consider what impact that's going to have on the budgets and the way we use all the resources available to us. But clearly, this will be subject to many, many reports over the coming months.
Thank you very much, Steve. Mark, please.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a very brief point on one of Colin's points, and I know that, we know that, but this is a public report, a published report on our website. The most important audience is the public, and that's who that the report is addressed to, as well as councillors, of course, and officers. But it's to the public. Probably going back a couple of years or a few years, you can think of similar times where maybe a director of finance might have said, "You're telling me what I know," and I'd say, well, I'd be disappointed if you didn't know that. I know you know that, but the report is really not for your purpose. It's for the public and the wider public out there. So it's just a point that needs to be made, I think, because where the audience that the report is aimed at.
It wasn't me who said that, mind Chair.
No, it wasn't, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, could I just come back a moment? Could I say thanks, Mark, for that? Yeah, I suppose it had escaped attention.
You're mute, Colin. You're mute, Colin.
Yeah, I tried 3 times and it wouldn't come off. Sorry about that. And that is genuine. Yeah, thanks, Mark. I say it sometimes escapes attention. You are looking to educate the wider public out there. Yeah, okay. Accept the points that you made. But if I could just come back to Steve for a moment, Chair. Can you give us any indication on progress on the report you mentioned, Steve?
Yeah, well, clearly we're coming into the budget setting process now, so we're already considering ways we can improve. I'm having regular conversations with my finance managers in terms of identifying what underlying cost pressures there are in the system currently. Also looking at the outturn position for last year to see what opportunities they may be for recurring savings. So those discussions are already taking place. We've already had some early discussions with Cabinet around the budget setting process for next year. And we're also starting discussions around how we link all of this in to the transformation programme moving forward, how we identify the financial benefits, how we measure outcomes, etc., etc. To be fair, Gareth's been quite helpful. We've had some good discussions with Gareth on that already. So that all of this work is underway. And as I said, you will see more detail on progress as part of the reports that come through on the wider transformation programme.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you. Are there any other questions, please?
No other questions,
No
Chair.
other questions.
Well, Chair, this thing is playing up. I was trying to ask Steve if there was a timeline on that.
Well, in terms of the timeline, Councillor Mann, much of this is going to have to be addressed. Certainly for 22-23, we've got quite a tight timeline in making sure that we set the budget to get a balanced budget for next year. What doesn't help is that we're not going to get details of the settlement until very late again. It's going to be the 21st of December. But, you know, we need to be in a position where we're ready to respond to that, depending on what the level of the settlement is. But in terms of the ongoing transformation programme, it will be more in the medium to longer term. But again, you know, as I said, the proposals for improvement, particularly around identifying financial benefits and aligning those with the MTFP, that work will be ongoing as part of the development of the MTFP over the next 2, 3, 4, even 5 years.
Okay, so you'll have indigestion over your Christmas dinner then, Steve.
Well, hopefully it'll be a good settlement and I can have my lunch.
Will it be a turkey?
No.
Not going to burn that.
Thank you ever so much for the reports. Thank you very much. This report is just to note, so we don't have to do anything on this. And as for the next 3 items, agenda item 8, 9 and 10, they're for information and they haven't been called in. So all I can say is thank you all for attending the meeting. Thank you all very much for your contribution, and I will close the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank